You almost said Dr. Taylor, did you hear? Okay. The Thursday, the 28th special meeting of the School Board of Charlotte County, Florida is hereby called to order. Here in Charlotte County, we will achieve our vision of student success through our mission. We will provide an innovative educational environment that allows and inspires success for everyone. We will start our meeting tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And Mr. Brasser, if you could stand and lead us, since you're going to be leading us in the budget discussion, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The main item on today's agenda is obviously the tentative budget and running through the budget hearing items. So if any citizens are here and wish to make a public comment, there are comment cards in the back. In the Jean, could you turn around and kind of point to the little cards there? Any citizen wishing to speak can fill out one of those cards, bring them over here to our secretary, and then we'll be sure and call on you during the public comment opportunity. Additions and corrections to tonight's agenda, Mr. Superintendent.
I have one addition this evening, and that is for H1A payment requests for Wititsky, Ross, and McKinley.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the addition to tonight's agenda, which is the payment request for the attorneys. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Superintendent, do we have any reports tonight?
No, we do not.
And I also don't see that we have any old business. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So then we are going to recess the regular board meeting for purposes of calling to order the public hearing on the 2011-2012 budget for fiscal year 2011-2012. Mr. Superintendent.
The order of this particular part of the hearing calls for superintendent's opening comments. So I have a few for this evening. To say that we have a lean budget before you is an understatement. It's a very lean budget. Our revenue is approximately $20 million less than last year, while we are anticipating serving 120 fewer students. So unlike Starbucks, we can't close 400 stores and reduce our expenses. We have to go to people. So we have reduced our employee count by approximately 140 employees. We have also had program reductions in elementary guidance, science, technology, environment, math supplemental program, not our core, but a supplemental program, elementary physical education, media services, K-12, and we have increased teaching load for our secondary teachers from teaching 5 of 7 periods to 6 of 7 periods. Those are the major pieces. As far as our human resources and program resources, our employees are also now contributing 3% of their income to their own retirement. But that money is coming out of their salaries. That is not an additional amount of money on top. So we have also reduced our employees' paid holidays on a sliding scale that is balanced between our 180-day employees and our 255-day employees. So that holiday loss ranges from 3 to 6 days for our employees, which is another 1.5%, approximately 1.5 to 1.9% for employees. So most of our employees are experiencing a take-home pay of about 4.5 to 5% less for this coming year, in addition to the program reductions. Those savings total about $10 million. The other $10 million of the $20 million revenue loss we have offset from our savings. And we had a carry forward reserve of about $15 million, and we are taking $10 million of that this year and putting it toward the problem, which, unless something changes, if next year is like this year, we will then have a $10 million problem because we won't have a reserve to put at it. We will have to further reduce services for our kids, and we'll be looking at next year the elimination of the arts, the teachers teaching 6 out of 6 classes with no planning, those kinds of things will be the only way we'll get to $10 million if there is not some kind of a change between this year and next year. I wish I had cheerier comments for you, but those are the realities we're facing at this point in time. That said, let me go ahead and read into the record the school taxable required local effort, the discretionary millage rate, and the capital improvement millage rate. And again, I would like to remind those who may be here tonight or are listening that the school board does not set the required local effort that is established by the Florida legislature. So when you get your tax bill and you see school taxes state on your property tax in a millage rate of 5.0960, that is the amount that we have been mandated by the state of Florida to levy. We have no latitude in doing that. So this year's required local effort, for the record, is 5.0960. We have a discretionary millage, small discretionary millage of 0.7480, and a capital improvement millage that one time was 2.0. It is now 1.5000, and that is our sole source of money for capital improvements, equipment, renovations, and those kinds of things. The state no longer gives us any money whatsoever. We used to have PICO funds. They have been at zero for the last 2 years. This is our only source of maintaining our buildings, our equipment, buying furniture, and those kinds of things. So those are the 3 rates, millage rates, that we're required to read into the record. At this time, I will turn this over to Fran Brasser.
Thank you, Dr.
Fran?
Whitaker.
Fran is our Director of Budget, and this is his show every year.
My show.
And he and his team have worked many, many hours, days, weeks, months on this.
We have a copy of the detailed budget book up here. If anyone's interested about this. We also have it posted on our website. A copy of tonight's presentation is right here. If you want a copy of that, we will probably post this on our website also. This is the tentative budget that we will be reviewing tonight. It's been a very challenging budget for the school board, the superintendent, his leadership team, the budget advisory committee. It's composed of members of our bargaining units, our other staff, and so forth. A very trying budget. Dr. Whitaker indicated that we have a $20 million shortfall this year. We've been anticipating that shortfall for a couple years now. We were spared that 2 years ago when the federal government came through with the ARRA money, American Reinvestment Act, and so forth. I'm going to go through some of those figures, but let us show some millage rates. We have an excellent staff here, excellent school board, excellent leadership that helps us put all this together, I mean, $20 million is unbelievable out of a $140 million budget. What the legislature has done, they have, in fact, reduced our millage rates. Taxpayers here in Charlotte County will see some benefit from that. It's about a $0.5 The taxable values in Charlotte County have dropped to $13.6 billion. That's $1 billion down from last year, and another $2 million on top of that, so $3 billion down from 2 years ago. The required local effort millage rate that's set by the state legislature is up from 2 years ago, but down from last year. We had a prior period funding adjustment this last year. What the legislature has chose to do, that's a millage rate that the school board can levy if they experience a reduction in taxable values due to the value adjustment board. When people appeal their taxable values, if that goes down significantly, the legislature has authorized us to make it up because we already have set our millage rates. And so if the millage rate is set and the values go down, they've authorized us to make up the difference by imposing a millage rate the following year to make up for that lost revenue. This year there was none. Our actual taxable values as of this point in time, compared to last year, the $14 million, is actually up about $2 million. Not billion, $2 million. So that prevented us from levying any additional taxes because we didn't experience a loss. The next is a discretionary boards authorized by the legislature strictly at their prerogative to levy this additional 0.748 mils. Last year, the last 2 years, we've been authorized to levy at the school board's discretion again with a supermajority of the vote. In other words, 4 out of the 5 had to approve it, a $0.25 mil for additional operating purposes. Those mills are no longer authorized by the school board, but the school board was and did choose to take it out for a referendum, and it failed the referendum, so therefore that money is no longer available to the school board for operating purposes. So we have an operating millage this year of 5.844 mil, approximately what it was 2 years ago. Our capital improvement tax millage, which is strictly related to the maintenance of our facilities and the improvement and the building of our infrastructure, 1.5 mils, is being approved this year, or proposed to be approved. So we have a total millage rate this year approximately what it was 2 years ago. It's down slightly from last year by, again, about a $0.5 mil. It's about a 6.3% decrease from last year. So last year we had about a 6.6% increase. This year it's down a like amount. This is basically the benefit the school district derived from this is at 100% levy. Based on our property values and our millage rates, we would have operating taxes this year of about $79.5 million. Last year it was $92.8 million. The year before it was 97.6. Property values go down, and then the millage rate also went down. So we've experienced the loss there of almost $20 million alone. Capital improvement tax is down. Also, you can see that there, $5 million from 2 years ago. Fortunately, the school board has chose not to make any a lot of long-term commitments. We have one major long-term commitment with this money. It is about $5 million a year that we've committed to a bond issue that was very beneficial for this county because the federal government is giving us a subsidy, part of the American Reinvestment Act money, to pay the interest on these bonds. We get about 92% that the government is paying 92% of the interest on these bonds. In other words, other communities outside of Charlotte County are helping us the interest on these bonds. But that's all we have committed totally out of those. If you're an individual homestead owner in Charlotte County and your homestead's assessed at $200,000 and you qualify for the homestead exemption naturally, you would have a taxable value for school purposes of $175,000. Your school taxes would amount to these figures. Your school taxes this year will approximate what they were 2 years ago. There's a slight difference here of $2. So your taxes this year will go down for school purposes of $87, approximately the same amount that they went up last year, assuming your assessed values are the same. So you can see property taxes dropped on this home, went up $175 2 years ago, another $85, now it's back down. These are all the operating budgets within the school district. We have the general fund. It's a comparison from one year to the next. You see a $10,000 or $10 million difference there, total, for the operating budget. That's where we pay our basic teacher salaries. We pay our electricity for all the abilities, our air conditioning, all our student aides, our custodians. All those costs are basically out of that fund. Then we have the food service fund. We operate the largest food service program in the county. It's stayed about the same. We've experienced a slight decrease in students, so that is food costs continue to rise. We have not increased the price of the meals this year. We don't anticipate having to at this point in time. Federal Revenue Fund, that's our basic, these are the entitlement dollars that we get pretty much every year from the federal government. They have hooks attached to them. They're IDA for children with disabilities. They're Title I money, Chapter 1 for reading, all specially earmarked federal programs that must go to specific purposes. Then if you look at last year, the ARRA Stabilization Fund, $5.4 million does not show up this year. It was in the 2010-11. This year we just left. And it was in the prior year. 2 years that the federal government helped subsidize our budget. In addition to that, last year we had what's called the Education Jobs Act Fund. The federal government appropriated money specially for the purpose to counteract the loss of funds within school districts so that they would not have to lay off as many teachers. That was the basic purpose for them. So those two groups of funds there are gone. It's about $8.7 million. In addition to that, through the ARRA money, we had some what was called stimulus money. About $3.4 million over the last 2 years that was used to provide additional programs in hopes of providing additional jobs, which it in fact did. Those three sources have pretty much sunsetted. We have $600,000 approximately that's carried over from the stimulus dollars that will be spent this year, probably before October 1st. In addition to that, we have our insurance FEMA funds. This is basically funds that came from, and it's been going on since Hurricane Charlie. We had claims, basically, losses of almost $250 million. We have rebuilt 6 new schools. We're in the process of rebuilding some ancillary facilities. So this money should be exhausted pretty much this year. There may be some carryover into the following year. Much of this money came from our insurance. We had a very good insurance program. Not nearly as good, a lot better than what we have now, because the costs have gone up dramatically and you can't afford the insurance like you could in the past. And we've got some money coming from FEMA We have not settled with either one of those, and we will be working on that to settle those costs and maximize whatever we can get out of those. We have our debt service funds. None of the debt service funds are general obligation debt. None of them. We have not any millage levied against our county property to pay this back. The only possible exception you can include is that our capital improvement funds, some of those monies are earmarked, and that's based on property collections, are earmarked to repay some bonded debt. The debt I talked to earlier, that 92% of the interest is paying by the federal government, being paid by them. Then we have our capital projects funds. You see a large difference there. A lot of that is related to carryover projects from prior years that we're finalizing that haven't been completed. We got money in there that carried over earmarked for example, Lemon Bay and Meadow Park in those funds also. The bond money's in there. That's right. Last year the bond money came in about 50. How much was that? About 60 million. 60 million. That came in last year, and we've spent a lot of that. In addition to that, we have our internal service fund, the largest fund in there, and basically the only fund, one so small, this is our employee insurance fund. We school board contributes funds to help pay for health insurance, life insurance, these type of programs. We call them cafeteria funds. The employees contribute to those funds. The retirees that continue their insurance through the school board pay for those funds. All those funds those dollars come into the internal service fund for employee benefits, and then are paid out as in the form of premiums. In our case, pretty much self-employed. We pay out the claims. So we have a $263 million overall budget. Some of that is done by transfers, so it's revenue that's generated in one fund from another, so we back that out. Our total, basically revenues for the total district is about $246 million for all funds. Our operating budget, it's kind of a convoluted affair this year. I was mentioning that to Mr. Swift when he was in my office. He was asking me about some figures. They just didn't make any sense. And then I reminded him about our different funding sources and how we're required to maintain those in separate funds. So what I've done for this comparative summary is combine those funds. We have our general operating budget, our education job bill funds, and our education stabilization funds, because all those funds were pretty much all earmarked for what we typically in the past were our operating budgets, paid for our teacher salaries and our aides and all that stuff. They were all earmarked for those purposes. So I combined those for this purpose. So our beginning fund balance this year is about $16.4 million. We're anticipating revenues of about $109 million. If you look at last year, that figure was $129 million. There's your $20 million that Dr. Whitaker was referring to earlier that we have lost in revenue this year. We have some transfers in that stayed about the same. So our total available dropped about $18 million something, including our beginning fund balance, which was up slightly. The fund balance was up not by accident. It was by direction, on a purpose. Dr. Whitaker in the spring instituted a freeze on many of our spending purposes. We instituted in the fall under Dr. Gaylor, before Dr. Whitaker took over, and freeze on the hiring of we could only hire critical staff. So purposely we worked on generating additional revenue. And in some cases, I'm sure it was very painful to some of our people within the district. This year will be no less painful, I'm sure. So the appropriations down here, we have reduced our appropriations by about $8 million. So if our revenues go down 20 and our appropriations only go down 8, we have used $10 million of that fund balance we worked so hard to build to help relieve some of the cuts for this coming year. So from the $16 million that we had left over coming into this year, we've appropriated $10 million of that, leaving us with about $6 million there. This is how that loss was generated. We have lost the funding level loss. That's the level at which the state government funded us on a per student basis. Then we have losses directly related to our student losses. I think there's around 280 students that we've anticipated dropping from last year. In addition to that, we lost this critical needs $250,000. In addition to that, last year was the first year we brought in this prior period's adjustment tax. We didn't qualify it for this year, but last year we did. And that generated about $1.7 million. Well, that's typically would have never got that. That would have just been lost. But last year, first year it was brought in. We lost our federal stabilization funds, $5.4 million. We lost our education jobs money. That one's got an interesting connotation for it because when we built our budget last year, we did not have those funds. Those funds were given to us in the fall of the year, and they come through the state, and the state cautioned all school boards not to spend those funds. Charlotte County did not spend them. And, well, what we did, they said don't spend them, but don't. In other words, use current operating expenditures against that. Save that money up for next year. We had to spend the money this past year, but we used it on appropriations that we already had within the budget. So we lost the $18.8 million there. In addition to that, we lost this other stimulus funds, the funds that were set aside to create new jobs. So that's our significant revenue losses. And you can see why we are struggling. We can see why employees took pay cuts this year in the form of lost paid holidays, those type of things. One figure you don't see on here is that 3% the employees observed from their retirement contributions. The boards were paying that figure, strictly reducing board expenditures and put into the hands of the employees. So that reduced it, if I remember right, close to $3 million there, that transfer of the cost of the retirement to the employees from the school board. This is our ending fund balance as it stands now. We had, last year coming into the year, we had, or the end of this year, I'm saying, our ending fund balance, we had categorical carryovers. These are funds that are earmarked by the state government for specific purposes, $728,000. We've got an inventory that sits in the warehouse, $220,000. We have money set aside for an FTE audit adjustment. Every few years, every 3 years, the state comes in and audits how we report the number of students we have, and there's usually something that's not been done quite appropriately or whatever, and we argue with the state, and so we've got a reserve on there about $200,000. So we have a reserve there of about $1.1 million ending this past year. This year, we've already appropriated those carryover dollars, so that goes down. But we had an unappropriated reserve coming into the year of $15 million. This year, we have it for this current year, going into next year, we have set aside about $5.7 million that we have not earmarked for any specific purposes. It's sitting there merely as a contingency fund to provide some cushion for our operating expenses as they go on, or revenues that perhaps could come in at a lesser value than what we've estimated. That pretty much is our operating budget picture. Now, this is how we spent the money. I think this is a pretty significant graph for the public to see. Again, this is all the funds combined, not just general fund, those ones that cover our operations. But you look at this comparison here, we lost $20 million. We cut our expenditures by almost $9 million. But if you look at that instructional line, the percent that goes into the classroom has actually gone up. So we have really tried not to impact what actually hits in the classroom. We're not spending as much dollars, but the percent of dollars that we have available of what we are anticipating expending has gone up. Operation of plant, that has also gone up because that's one area that we have a much more difficult time controlling. Our electricity bills, if FPL gives us a rate increase, we can't control that. We've done a lot to control energy costs, but there are limits to some degree. We have a significant reduction in school administration costs. They have lost a lot of help in the offices at schools. They all have lost at least one clerical person. They've lost additional aides in classrooms and so forth. Another area that's down is pupil personnel. This is our guidance counselors, our social workers, those type of people. Transportation, we still have to transport our students. Major factor in cost of transportation is gas and diesel. We don't see that dropping anytime soon. So that's a slight increase there. Maintenance and operations, pretty much the same. It's pretty much in the ballgame. It's up a little as a total percent, but the dollar figure is down. Curriculum is down slightly. Central services. Now this is all in descending order of the portion of your appropriation. Because if you go back to the other slide, instructional, that's the highest percent of our budget. The next highest is operations, and so forth down. As you continue down, you see when we get down to general administration, for example, 0.3% of the budget. Significant decrease there. Of course, part of the reason is last year we had 2 superintendents on board for part of the year. We have to remember that. So then we have, community service. So all those areas, if you look at those, many of those are staying pretty much the same, even dollar amounts now. Instructional media, more what goes on in the school. We substantially reduced the number of media specialists in our schools this year. Many schools are sharing a media specialist. The other factor I just want to point out is over the last few years, as money has become shorter, the blunt of the reductions that have been divvied out have been at the departmental level. We have really struggled over those years, to keep funds in the classroom, to keep funds in the media, to keep those funds at the school level. So you don't see a lot of cuts here is because they have been taking place right along. So you won't see a lot of that here. One other thing I want to point out here, in case someone else has already seen it, is that
We've all seen it.
Board of Education, substantial increase there. One of the things that we had to do, well, 2 things we had to do that really significantly impacted this. We had to let 140 people go, positions go. We had made it a priority, superintendent and the board, the budget advisory committee, to not lay off people. 140 people is a lot of people to absorb. So what we've been working on, and we've got that down to a very small number. I think it's under 40 now, somewhere like that. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, we're under 30.
Under 30 now.
Reiner's here. I know he can give us the exact.
So we're under 30 of those people that we have not in place. Now people have retired. All this was done through attrition. So we are hoping, but the bottom line is there's $340,000 in that figure under school board because they're the ones that lay off the people. and we have to pay unemployment tax. Unemployment taxes with school board is a direct pay. You lay someone off, you pay their benefits. We don't pay rates like a lot of companies. They pay an ongoing rate, and if they lay off somebody, then they pay it, then it affects their rate the next year. We don't do that. If we lay off somebody, they apply for unemployment, they get it, the government bills us for it, dollar for dollar. One of the big things. The other thing is, $56,000 is, ever since I've been here, we have been audited by the Auditor General's Office of the state of Florida. Once a county population exceeds $150,000, you are required to provide your own financial audit. So $56,000 is budgeted in there. It's a hard, good number because we've already contracted for that service. So we will have to budget for that. So those are just two of the items in there. There's some money also in there for board travel, maybe $5,000 or $6,000, maybe $1,200 a piece, something like that at max. There's money in there for their surety bonds, and there's a few bucks under $1,000 in there for school board travel. One of the other major items in there is the value adjustment board. Every year that's been running around $24,000, something like that. A lot of people appealed their property values last year, and our portion of that bill is $50,000. $50,000 this past year. And I can tell you right now, I wasn't expecting that, and I didn't budget $50,000. So we've only got $24,000 or $24 million or $24,000 budgeted.
Not $24 million.
Yeah. Well,
for value
because if
adjustment
the
board.
county government wants to subsidize that. But so that's why you see that large increase there. And we're hoping we don't have to use that unemployment money at all. So that's where we're at there. Now, the other major fund that we have is our capital outlay fund, which has gone down dramatically. We got a capital improvement tax, which we talked about earlier. We're only allowed to budget it at 96%. It used to be 95%. The reason they changed it to 96, I know why, but the reason that is because we don't generate all those funds. People pay their bills early, so they get a discount. That type of thing. You can get up to a 4% discount. PICO dollars. This is money that's generated from the gross receipts tax that you see on your bills. It is zero this year. This is the first year. I've been here 28, close to 29 years. It's the first year PICO has been zero. Not that PICO's totally gone away, because they bond some of that money. It shows up in your bill. We bonded it, and they've given us money, and they've spent it on other places, and so forth. But there's usually a few dollars left over that's called pass-through or flow-through money that we get for maintenance and for new construction. Or the new construction can be bonded money, because if you haven't reached your capacity on the PICO dollars revenues, you can bond it. But this is the first year that we have shown a zero. An interesting thing, though, is we have charter schools that apparently there's been a commitment made to, and I believe the figure's $5 million.
55.
$55 million in PICO dollars that is continuing to go to charter schools. Not to your public schools here in Charlotte County, but to charter schools throughout the state. So that's money we are missing in our budget. Capital outlay and debt service, it's a small amount, most of it's bonded. We never used to bond this money. It was a flow-through. The board didn't like to bond this money. And one year the legislature said, you must bond this money. You must, so we bonded it. And now we're back up to where we've got $110,000 a year. It won't generate much in the way of bonds, so they haven't forced us to do it yet. But so we're paying interest on those dollars. Not on these dollars, but on our bonded money. We got interest earned, which is a pittance anymore if you looked at the interest rates lately. We've got carryover of about $45 million, so our budget's about $65 million. This is how we're spending it. We got new construction projects of $40 million. That is composed basically of Left Bay and Meadow Park Elementary School. There's $30 million of it. We've got about $8 million for Punta Gorda ancillary facilities related to hurricane. And then the smaller ones, QZAB Technology and so forth. Those are our major construction projects. Then we've got maintenance projects. We have to do the ongoing maintenance of our facilities. If we don't, what happens? We have to build new ones sooner. We don't take care of them. So we've got some money set aside for those purposes. HVAC, air conditioning, interior, exterior painting, roof repairs, replacements, and so forth. You've got some other ones, playgrounds. All this stuff needs to be taken care of on an annual basis. If not, now these are some other annual ongoing projects that we typically fund. They're on a replacement schedule basis. The thing we have to maintain our bus fleet. Here we are budgeting to replace 10. We replace our budget. Our buses about every 12,000, 15 miles. That's not 150,000 miles. About every 12, 13 years.
Every 12 what? Years. I didn't hear him say years.
We have vocational equipment for the tech center. We have vocational equipment for our high school and pre-K, not pre-K, but our elementary programs. Musical instruments. We have to keep our band in shape. All these other type of things. We have to replace our warehouse vehicles, our maintenance vehicles, instructional equipment. In spite of what the legislative thought several years ago, we do have to replace our ancillary facility equipment. For a while they were telling us we could not do that, but they've agreed at the present time. This is some of the other areas we have. Technology is a big area. We've got $3 million budgeted for technology. About half, not quite half of that is from carryover from the prior year. We got behind. Part of our issue there is we got behind on technology during Hurricane Charlie period when we were coming back from that. And this is our Hurricane Charlie fund. We're expecting to receive about another $3 million from insurance and FEMA. Now, we've already booked some receivables from insurance and FEMA that don't show up here because we've already booked the revenue, but we haven't necessarily got it yet. Then we got transfer from capital project fund. That's basically for the ancillary facilities. We got a fund balance of about $750,000, and those are what we're using those for. And Dr. Whitaker, I believe that concludes my presentations. I'd be willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, Fran.
Board members have any questions for Mr. Brasser? I know that we have had numerous workshops and conversations, not just with you, but with other members of departments and staff, and but that doesn't mean somebody may not have a question or ask for a clarification. Anybody? All right, seeing none, let me ask Mrs. Smith. I did see, I think it's Mr. Blaze, right? Yes. Did you want to speak to the budget topic, or did you want to speak about something else later in the meeting? Okay, welcome, citizen comment. And by the way, it was a pleasure to see you at the Lemon Bay Gym opening. We appreciate your attending.
My My name is Joe Blaze, and I live in Englewood East. My wife, Sandy, and myself, we purchased our home at the end of 2005. And one of the things that really was interesting was, because we have an empty nest. Our kids are grown up, our daughter. So, it's an investment in the community. We look at it that way, because somebody paid for my education. And I felt that the board, from looking at your administration back then, was very fiscally conservative. I mean, you didn't have a debt load, which I couldn't believe, because coming from Hillsborough County, that wasn't the case. I lived up there for 15 years. And I think that you're finding it showed courage on your part, because I know after listening to this informative presentation and putting a package which I'll look over in more detail, it had to be difficult to take on Lemon Bay High. When I saw 24 million, and I saw most of you at the gymnasium, which was, what a turnout, 400 people, maybe more. You have to be proud. I mean, I know I was. It's a great asset, because Englewood, if you pick up the papers, has had its share of negativity. Food pantries, unemployment, all that kind of stuff. And thank God, we're pulling together as a community. We've got nonprofits. We've got good people. But I feel that, I talk to a lot of kids because I belong to the Englewood YMCA, and I find that, they've got plans, they've got goals. They're moving ahead. I've done that. And I feel that this budget is crisis management. Again, I mean, you're doing the best you can, and there's a lot of, I realized by your presentation, Dan, that you have a lot of dependencies. You have to wait. Property values, which the housing market, we're all, property values is unbelievable. I mean, it impacts us all. And your school board has tremendous impact. I mean, I believe you're the largest employer in our county, and our small businesses are hurting big time. I mean, like in Englewood, I talked to somebody in the Sun, we had 6 businesses since March fail. I mean, they're gone. So, I mean, that's revenue, the top line, and I've become very involved, as Eileen knows, in economic development. I mean, I've worked with Bob Starr and many of the business people, and in Tampa, and I was pleased to see that in Tampa, the school board really worked hard with the chamber and the economic development of the county. And I believe you have a little different approach, but I know Sue Siffert and Todd Riebel, they kind of put my ulcer to rest that you guys are on board. You help economic development. We're going to have a new economic development person. We're going to have a strategic plan on the county side. I would hope that we have a team, we continue, because we've got to create jobs. We've got to turn our economy. Your impact is enormous on when you see all the maintenance and the construction that you've done in the past. I mean, I don't have to tell you, I'm preaching to the choir, I guess. But, I'm trying to make you smile a little bit because you look sad. And I couldn't get my wife to come because she says, honey, I've got enough dealing with our house budget. She does it, she's my CFO. So she just, this is more negativity for her. And, how much can you take? And the kids, we've got the greatest bunch of kids here. And, I mean, unfortunately, when they get off the school bus, they go home and they play with technology and stuff. So I don't see them that much in the neighborhood, but they're there because I see them get off the school bus. And I care about that. I mean, I think that we've got 3 generations. You've got my generation, the middle generation, and the kids that you are taking care of. And I support you 100%. And if I can do anything, to help you with our legislature, because I do advocate for ARP, and I know some of the, and we're going to have a legislative delegation in September 8th. And I think I know, Barbara, you talked a few years ago, and I thought you did a wonderful job trying to explain, how they needed to look at things and the planning and so on. So I, have been educating myself. So keep it up. But, you've got drug-free Charlotte, which I think Amity does. I couldn't believe it when I first moved here, 6 months, that there was a program like that in our county. I mean, I had never heard of such a thing. And I was in the neighborhood watch, and I got involved in that, Sheriff Cameron, so on and so forth. And also, I was invited, you had an outreach to the citizens where I met Eileen, and I think, Barbara, you participated with Superintendent Gaylor, where I hadn't been back to a school in years. And I spent half a day. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's still going on. I know it's probably not, it costs money, mm-hmm. but it pays off when you guys show, that because we sometimes don't know what you're doing.
Right.
You might be working so hard, and yet we're sitting in our house with the remote or whatever, and we don't know what's going on, until we get the election cycle. And then all hell breaks loose, excuse my English, but, we get that. And I told Dr. Whitaker I was so pleased with his editorial response. It was right on. We have a feeling that you're loaded with administration and people, because we want the kids to get the benefit. That's what it's about, is to get the teachers and take care. And I know a lot of teachers, and they're good people, So, as you can see, I'm kind of passionate about this. And keep up the good work, because, it's not easy. I wasn't budgeting when I had another life. So I know what you're faced with, and, hang in there, because we're gonna beat this. We're gonna be a county in a region that's gonna prosper at some point. I can't say when, but I'm an optimist. I think we will do it. But I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blaze. We appreciate partners like you. Mrs. Smith, are there any other citizens who wish to speak? Oh, okay. If you could just grab a card in the back so that we have your name on record. You can turn it in after you speak. That's fine. This guy's spoken to us before. Do you know his name? Okay. We may already have your name and address on record, but just for tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, Gerald Risley is my name. I think I was here a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've met you before.
Right. Well, I didn't see on there where we stood on the millage rate. Is that still coming up, or did we discuss that yet?
Did you walk in a few minutes late?
Yes, I did. I had
okay. I couldn't remember. That was one of the first things he showed. And if you go to the smaller packet over there, it's on the front.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
he's going to pull it up for you there.
Yeah. Okay.
It's actually, your millage rate has gone down 0.49 total this year, based on this tentative budget. There it is.
That was my concern, really. I understand that America is in deep trouble. The states are in deep trouble, and obviously, Charlotte County is also, And so I just like to work with people that realize that, things have changed. America has changed. The states changed. Things change here. So we all have to work within, our means and reality. And so I just like to emphasize that. There were some people earlier tonight were supposed to come, and they had to go to the same meeting I did, but they expressed some concern about maybe some of the classes being offered. Perhaps they're not maybe necessary. Unfortunately, she had all the data. I don't. But she was talking about hopefully that when we have a curriculum, we have the best and most important classes offered, and sometimes there's classes that probably don't really benefit the student's future and things of that nature. I'm not that tuned in to know really what's offered, whatever, but I hope that's under consideration always. I was engineering, and the classes I took were specific and for a purpose, and there was really zero foo-foo, I guess you might say, in that. And I hope students today are the same, that America competes in the world now. The foreign students are very sharp. They have probably more difficult curriculum than we do. So I'm hoping we're looking at that and very carefully and making sure that our students have, I guess the most beneficial curriculum for their future needs. So I'm talking in general now, but my point is that hopefully we look at things in all aspects and not just, things are good and you guys are doing a good job. That doesn't really do anything, but I think people got to get down very carefully and examine, what we're here for and what we're doing and making it, the most efficient. And hopefully the product that comes out is the best that can be in terms of students, their grades, their education, and how they can compete, in the world place there. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate very much your willingness to come out tonight and let us hear your comments. Share them with us. Are there any other citizens who wish to speak tonight? Okay, moving to my agenda. Then if there is no objection, we will close the public hearing. Seeing none, public hearing is closed, and we will resume the regular meeting. So we need board action on the public hearing items. Mr. Superintendent, if we can take the first, let me see here. If we can take the first motion to be the millage rates, and then the second motion will be the tentative district budget, that would work.
Okay, my recommendation
Yes, please.
this evening to the board is for a local required effort of 5.0960, for discretionary millage of 0.7480, and for a capital improvement millage of 1.5000.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve the required local effort millage rate at 5.0960, the discretionary millage rate at 0.7480, and the capital improvement millage rate at 1.5000. Is there board discussion? Mr. Swift, you don't have a comment about the former 2 mills capital improvement for us tonight?
No, but now that you mention it, oddly enough,
It's a rare night when you wouldn't want to speak to the 2.0 versus 1.5.
Yeah. That horse died a long time ago, I'm afraid. I made a comment in a press conference on the Amendment 7 lawsuit about the PICO dollars disappearing. And that comment has been picked up in a half a dozen different state newspapers. I've gotten phone calls from reporters. I think I saw a link. It's in Education Week this week. And it was about all of the money being shifted to charter schools. And further in the articles are comments from one of the state representatives who said, well, we built a lot of schools several years ago, and the school districts just don't need that PICO money anymore. And totally missing the point that most school districts haven't been using it for construction purposes, but have been using it for ongoing maintenance issues. And there were comments from a couple of superintendents who voiced that opinion as well. And it's just more of this attitude that we've got to do things for charter schools, when statistically in Florida you're 7 times more likely to be in a F school if you're in a charter than you are in a public school. I just don't understand.
Thank you. And for those of you who may not be familiar with PICO, it stands for Public Education Capital Outlay. It was actually very shocking across the state when for public education it was 0, and charter schools there were dollar figures there, although charter schools are public schools. Let's be sure and remind people of that. Any further discussion on the millage rates? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries unanimously, and we will see those numbers again in September? Okay. Next item for superintendent recommendation is the tentative district budget for fiscal year 2011-2012. Mr. Superintendent.
Madam Chairman, I'm recommending approval tonight of the total district budget allocation of $246,373,225.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the tentative district budget that Mr. Brasser just went through. Final figures found on page 5, column 2011-2012, reading $246,373,225. Board discussion. It has been, taking 140 positions and putting those people in, I guess you'd call it limbo, because they don't know if they're going to have a job, and if so, where, has been very challenging on every single school site. Every single operational site in this district has been affected. And so even those of us those people who still have jobs and weren't necessarily affected by being moved were certainly affected by, as you mentioned, the fewer dollars in their pocket, 3% for retirement, another 1.5% for the loss of holiday days, vacation days. Every single person in this district has been affected, every single one of them. Every single department, nothing has been left untouched or unexamined. And I really appreciate the efforts that all of our staff members have done to contribute to the best possible functioning in the classrooms that we can have, because I know that's what people were looking at when they were doing this. And, we're going to do the best that we can for our students this year. We will not have the same support services available to them. Some of our departments don't have the full-time, we won't have the full-time media specialists to help kids with research. We won't have, in some cases, guidance people are cut back. And those are crucial services for our students to achieve levels of student success. So when we do have to cut back on some of these services, it's not unexpected that we may have results in student achievement. And that's just something I want to make sure to remind people of when we're voting on a budget that has this many cuts in it. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business, the consent agenda. Mr. Superintendent.
I'm recommending approval tonight of the consent agenda as presented to you.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Any board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Next item is the action agenda. We have personnel action and job descriptions.
Just
was the
one item.
addendum on that?
Just one item tonight.
Oh, that was a salary
Yes,
payment. I'm sorry.
the addendum was part of consent.
That's right. Okay.
Yes. And because we just had a meeting last week, this is a very small action agenda. But I am bringing to you tonight a request to approve the personnel action and job descriptions as presented to the board.
So moved. Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the personnel action and job descriptions as presented. Board discussion? Seeing that, you guys are like somber. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I do thank you, Mr. Blaze, for your animated comments. Next item on the agenda is citizen comment. Do we have any citizens who wish to speak tonight at this point in the agenda? Again? You spoke so positively before. Come on up and join us.
Join us every.
Come back again in 2 weeks.
You're invited to every meeting.
Mr. Blaze.
It's not easy, because I'm a realist, trust me.
Risley. Yeah, Mr. Risley.
One thing I just wanted to bring to your attention, and maybe it's already been brought to your attention, but we had a tragedy 10 years ago, which was 9/11. And Commissioner Tricia Duffy this Tuesday said that a lot of people, are talking to her about how we can commemorate. And I think our students, the impacts, it's all about the vision, what, it has occurred. We don't want to dwell just on the tragedy because, where are we going as a country, our direction, like what, and I don't know, if you've even thought of it or, you want to coordinate. We've got a lot of veterans and I'm dealing with first responders. Like I met with Chief Gorski. I talked to their board at the Englewood Fire District yesterday, and I mentioned the same thing to them, and they were very, because we all know what the firefighters did in New York, and and that kind of thing. But I think there's some really good things we could do, like in my neighborhood, we're just trying to get flags, just to commemorate, America, and I think we're going through another difficult time, as someone just spoke before, but I think we've got a lot to be thankful for and blessed for.
Yeah.
To be able to just discuss like this, many countries, it just doesn't happen.
Thank you. And just so that you know, when Commissioner Duffy, she held kind of a inaugural conversational meeting of people to discuss some community plans for the 9/11. She really felt like it needed to be a commemorated day of some sort. But she had invited me, and I did participate in that day. And we had some. It was a brainstorming session. What can the community do?
Yeah, it shouldn't just be
kind of
about
Board of
government.
Courts, Charlotte, Englewood, exactly. And we talked about who needed to be sitting at the table, and we did talk about education and really kind of in addition to remembering those people who lost their lives, but also celebrating the American spirit. It is a Sunday, so we were including churches and things like that. But just so you know, we do work really well and consistently with Board of County Commission and Economic Development and those things.
Groups
Yeah,
out there, as you know, nonprofits.
yeah, exactly.
And,
They were there too. Yeah.
Just to give you an aside, I go to the Y 3 times a week to work out. My wife does water aerobics, but there's a gentleman there that is a Pearl Harbor survivor. And he is the most positive man. He lost his wife 4 years ago. They would have been married 64 years. And that was another moment. And I was just 1 year old, when that occurred. So, but to hear him talk about what some of our history, which, I've always been an advocate of geography, history, and these are the tough programs to get supported, at the state level. I know I've tried many times through Ken Robertson and Michael Grant to get that put on a curriculum, and I guess, it's tough. Social studies, we're more into technology.
Thank you. Sure.
I want to assure you, we have a very robust social studies program.
Excellent.
American history, civics in 7th grade. It's a very important part of what we do. Our Veterans Day celebrations are legend in the communities. Port Charlotte Middle School has one of the best I've ever seen. Very inclusive. The veterans come to the schools, are honored, participate in the programs, and yes, we are preparing a recognition in honor of the 10th year anniversary of 9/11.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Attorney comment, Mrs. Young. All right. Board member comment, Mrs. Miller.
Oh, okay. I was first last time.
I know. That's why I figure I'm changing things up here.
Okay. Well, Tuesday, July 26th, with the ribbon cutting at Lemon Bay Gymnasium, it marked the beginning of a new and well-deserved high school for our students and staff in the community. Many people showed up with smiles on their faces. I watched as they walked through the door, and they looked so great. Whether it was due to the manta rays on the outside of the building or in the lobby or in the actual gymnasium itself. The bright colors were everywhere. All the little extra touches are just a long wait for their improved new school. The smiles just probably was because of all of that. Jerry, we want to thank you and your staff and all the people involved for that wonderful evening and for the future of Lemon Bay High School. Fran, I want to thank you for a job that was difficult but well done. You and your staff, the leadership team, the advisory committee did this knowing there would be many reductions in funding this year. We have a balanced, efficient budget for the 2011-2012, and we thank you for that. The other thing is, don't forget Saturday, July 30th is the Back to School Carnival at the Cultural Center from 9 to noon. I know that you're going to have more to say.
I'm going to save him for last this time, actually. Mr. Swift.
Just a couple of quick things. I put on your desks earlier the schedule, meeting schedule for my President's Retreat, the September 7th, 8th, and 9th. You're all invited to the dinner September 7th at the Lashley Crab House. Please let me know if you're coming and if you're bringing a guest or spouse or significant other or whatever.
Friend off the street.
Yeah, you know.
I'm bringing Joe.
Yeah. There are some, you'd ask about whether you were welcome. Yes, you're welcome to attend anything you want to attend. Most of it is really geared to as those of you who've been on the board for these things before, the FSBA board is really geared to the board of directors, but particularly the economic comments by Mr. Jim Zingali, I think will be helpful in planning for the future. Fran, congratulations again on a great presentation tonight. It's I know what you go through in preparing it and putting up with all of us trying to harass you in the last 2 or 3 days to find out the things we don't understand while you're trying to get this together so you can explain it to everybody else. One thing, Dr. Whitaker, that I would like to suggest that came out of a column that was in the paper that I wrote a response to, and I suggested that, and I think, and we've had this discussion, I believe, that that in addition to the typical or the existing budget advisory committee, that a citizens advisory group be created as well, and we can all suggest a couple of names to you of people who would be good to be on that committee. The other thing related to my President's Retreat for FSBA, yesterday we got an invitation that the legislative delegation meeting is going to be on the 8th from 1:30 to 4:30, right smack in the middle of the retreat. So I'm obviously not available, but hopefully a couple of other folks will be able to attend. That's all I have tonight. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Rendell.
Thank you. And if you did not have the pleasure of listening to Mr. Swift's coronation speech after he was sworn in as FSBA's president last month.
That's His Excellency, Mr. Swift.
His Excellency, Mr. Swift. You now have the opportunity not to hear his speech again, but you can actually read it. Instead, if you go to fsba.org and click on briefs, updates, and on that whole page, you actually have to scroll up on it, and then there's 4 or 5 pages, I think, of your speech talking about education, leadership, and other such matters. And so if you have a night that you
Really slow night, you can't sleep.
No, I have to say that. You have a night where you just cannot get to sleep. Whip that thing out and read it, and you'll be out. I mean, it's excellent. It really is. You hand it to you.
Put me to
It's an
sleep
excellent
writing
job
it,
of writing
so.
it. You can tell it took you months to write it. And the article you mentioned about you responding to the other man's article was very good. You cleared up a lot of misinformation. And thank you again, Mr. Brasser. Always clear, understandable budget presentation, yet very comprehensive. So each year it seems to be a little clearer, or maybe that's because I understand a little more, so it's clearer to me. So thank you. That's it.
Mr. Vincent.
Yeah, Barbara, we're going to have to fix something for the record, because I could have sworn you said that Lee's speech was somewhere under briefs.
Yeah.
And I have a really hard time
There you
buying
go.
that anything Mr.
Yeah.
Swift has written has been brief.
Yeah, oxymoronically, it's under briefs and
And
subject-
it's
subjects,
anything but.
yes.
As Eileen said, the back-to-school carnival, this is the last time you'll hear me plugging it. It's this Saturday. Come out, help, all that good stuff. We had also discussed wearing our Charlotte Local Education Foundation T-shirts to a board meeting. I believe it's August meeting that we
Is
agreed
that
upon.
one? Yeah. You got yours right, Cheyenne?
Do you have a shirt? Okay, good job. You're in the club, so I just want to remind everybody of that. And back to the budget. You're right, we are somber, because this was not something that if any of us really had the vote, we wouldn't have done. It's not where we wanted it to be, and we have played the hand we're dealt, and I think that we've done everything we can. At Lemon Bay, without talking too much about Lemon Bay, I had about 3 different people come up to me and say, "Oh, tough time to be a school board member. Isn't it hard being a school board member?" And I really don't have an answer. I said, "Oh yeah, it's kind of hard." And oddly, that night, I was telling my wife about everybody going, "Man, it's really hard to be a school board member." And I came up with the right answer. And this is completely genuine. It would be a lot harder if it weren't for people like you, Fran, because we have the staff that we have. I'm the new guy here. This was all Greek isn't even the right word. It was written in Martian. And the job that you guys have done, and Doug too, and everybody, of helping, and it's all of you. When I say you, it's everybody. The job you guys have done of putting this all together and putting it into a form that somebody who's as green as I am can really understand what's going on. You should be commended. So thank you very much. And that's it.
Thank you. I have to mention the Lemon Bay open house as well, to thank the staff, but also I want the board to know that I in the last 2 days since we had that ribbon cutting, I have had more people. I've had random texts and random emails and people stopping me in parking lots. Thank you. It is the only thing that community has had to smile about in 2 years. And we, as a district, have been able to give them that. And they recognize that, and they're thankful for it. And I want to be sure to share that with you folks, because you may not be getting the random texts and emails that I'm getting, or the stopping in the parking lot because you don't live in my neighborhood. But it has meant so much to that community that we've been able to deliver that. And those of you who were in purchasing and, or who are going to be delivering the cafeteria soon, I mean, it's a team effort, and the people in Englewood are thankful. And you've given them something to be excited about when they didn't have much to be excited about. So just thanks everyone for that. One thing I wanted to make sure that we all remembered is that before we have our next school board meeting, school is going to open for all of our students, not just our year-round students. And Mr. Duckworth, it should be noted to you and your bus drivers that young Michael Messina now has a driver's license, and he will be on the road. So his transportation to school may affect all the other buses. They might want to. No, he's a good, safe driver, but he went and got his license this morning. And so if you see me breaking out in a cold sweat sometimes, now you know why. But it's exciting that the schools are open. I know that there are some people who are still, Mr. Briner, unsure of where they're going to be and what they're going to do. And I know that you guys are doing as much as you can to provide some direction and calmness in a little bit of a storm right now. But I also saw the excitement from the new teachers at the new educator training. I actually went yesterday. You guys, I think, were there on Tuesday. And even those people who had been hired last year after the opening who were there, the 20-some odd, I was shocked at how many of them were actually in their same jobs, even though they hadn't started full-time until mid-year last year. So there's some calmness there and excitement about the new school year, and the new teachers hired I met are very excited to be here in Charlotte County. They like this community, and so I'm very hopeful for the opening of school that it's going to be as smooth and as exciting as always. Mr. Superintendent.
Well, I believe it will be. It's nice after this whole season of dealing with budget and those kinds of things to get about our real work. Mm-hmm. And our real work shows up Monday. 16,100 kids who are going to be excited for the most part.
Hopefully it's not this Monday. It's a Monday week because my kids still have summer work to finish.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Teachers come back excited. And a Monday week, our kids come back. Before our next board meeting, we will be in full session. Mm-hmm. It always amazes me. We try to give our schools a break and not show up the first day.
Yes.
But come second and third day, most of us are sneaking out to just get a feel of that excitement. And what is absolutely amazing is to walk into a school on the second day, and it looks like kids have been in school for 3 months. They're about their work, they're reading, they're working on their math, they're working on their science. It's just remarkable.
And it didn't used to be that way.
It didn't know. It used to take
That's right.
a couple of weeks to get
Yep.
geared up. And
changed.
you'd go into a
Really
high school auditorium, there'd be
changed.
200 kids sitting there waiting for their schedules
That's
each
right.
day to be adjusted. I will tell you today, day one, those kids are
Yep.
out, they're in their classes, teachers are starting to teach day one. It's really phenomenal. I do want to, the gentleman that spoke earlier is no longer here, but I will, if he was, I would assure him that we do not have fluff in our curriculum.
I don't have room for it.
And even if we did, in today's world, we wouldn't do that. We're past the shopping mall high school. We're past the underwater basket weaving courses. We are now into courses that are relevant and rigorous for our kids. Not all of them are required, but 24 credits are required. We have our kids get 28 opportunities. They have 4 credits to work on, and most of our students will take academic electives. They will take courses in history and math and science voluntarily on top of their requirements.
Or advanced foreign language.
Or advanced foreign language, or whatever it happens to be, which is one reason why our AP scores rank in the top 3 or 4 of the state of Florida, and Florida AP scores rank at the top of the country, number 1. I don't know if you saw it today, press release from the new commissioner. Department of Education recognizes top performing schools and districts. Of the districts highlighted, 13 out of 67 have earned an impressive A grade since the inception. I'll get this out. Inception of district grades in 2004. I believe that's not correct. School grades came out prior to that. But
Yes.
be that as it may, we are one of the 13. We have consistently been an A district, a high-performing district on top of that, as recognized by the state legislature, and we're only one of 5 districts that has been high-performing since the beginning. Additionally, we were one of 17 districts this year that have no schools graded lower than a B. So we are in elite company as a high-performing district. We attribute that to our teachers and our school-based leaders. They are remarkable. That said, I want to move into my concern about where the state is going in its funding of education. I weary of trite statements like, you can't just throw money at education. True. That is not an excuse to gut the system that is at the core of what made this country great and will continue to be the only thing that will make this country great, is public education, the education of the masses. We are still engaged in a great American experiment. No one in the world tries to educate all of its citizenry to the level that we do. No one. In our competing countries that score high on those tests will tell us that they select and sort. By the time their high school kids get to high school, they have already diverted significant portions of their population. They don't even try to educate children who have learning difficulties or are profoundly, significantly, or multiply handicapped. It isn't even attempted. Those kids are put into facilities similar to what we did in the 40s and 50s, sort of laid them aside. Do we have areas we need to improve in? Absolutely. But we're not going to get there by beating up on teachers and constantly sending the message out that the problem with American education is we don't get rid of bad teachers. That is not the problem in American education. Do we need to do a better job of helping poor teachers get better? Yes. and removing the ones who refuse to do that? Absolutely. But unlike what I heard one of our local politicians say in a recent luncheon, Florida does not have tenure. He made the statement to the audience, how many of you have a job for life? Nobody has a job for life other than teachers. That is not true. Florida does not have tenure. Florida has a protection of due process. The worst teacher in the world only has protection for 1 year and 45 days. And if we do our job as school-based leaders and district leaders, teachers that refuse to improve should be and must be removed, given alternative career options after 1 year and 45 days. That is not an option for us. Our issue, our problem is not poor teachers. It is one of the issues we deal with. We have unbelievable teachers that over the last 4 years, with only the smallest adjustment to their income, have stepped up and taken our population, which has become increasingly poor, from 42% of our students in poverty to 61% of our students in poverty. And during that time, when American educational trends would tell us our achievement should be going down because our rate of poverty is going up, our rate of achievement has gone up. Mm-hmm. Our teachers have stepped up. They have worked heroically with our kids. And we're at 80 and 90% of our elementary kids being on grade level in reading. We have less than a 3% dropout rate when the rest of the nation has a 17% dropout rate. Because we go out, Ron Schuyler and his staff goes out every summer and knocks on the doors of every single child that dropped out of school in this district and invites them to come back to school, back into that program at the academy, and get their high school diploma. Because we know that without that, they have a dismal, dismal future. But with this, I'll close. My concern in hearing the constant rhetoric from our legislators and from the media about teachers being the ones at fault on this is I'm seeing our really good teachers become beaten down. Mm-hmm. And we hear, well, you have to do more with less, to a point. And all of us have been involved in either jobs or in activities, sports growing up, some activity where you reach a point of breakdown in the more with less. As an athlete, I would be on a pretty strict diet and exercise regimen as both a football player, wrestler, and a baseball. Well, baseball was pretty soft, but the other two sports were pretty rigorous. And I will tell you that I could only diet so far as a wrestler and increase my productivity in that sport before my body system started to break down. Mm-hmm. You have seen jobs, equipment, and organizations that try to do more with less, and eventually they will break down. Entropy. It happens in systems. Doing more with less will get you only so far, and I would propose to you, we have done more with less, especially the last 4 years. It is time, as the economy now rebounds, for this state to step up and understand that public education is not just one more expense, one more burden on the state's taxpayers, but public education is truly an investment in the future of this state. It is not a cost, it's an investment. It is a critical investment, and if they don't do that, they will see the huge gains they've seen in recent years. Education Week, Florida ranked 37th 5 years ago, ranks 5th today in the nation. You can thank our teachers for that. That wasn't superintendents, it wasn't curriculum folks, wasn't anybody in the system other than teachers and the leadership in the buildings in which they work. They need to be thanked, patted on the back and compensated appropriately. And people don't like to hear that. Oh, just throw more money. No, I'm talking about paying professionals for the professional their work they did. In the 1990s, I remember one of the speakers of the House said this: we are done giving more money to education until this state turns around and we see progress academically. And that statement was needed. We were coasting. Florida wasn't progressing. Costs were going up. 15 years later, Florida has turned the corner. All of the international reports say that Florida is progressing faster than any other state. We have moved up into higher rankings, and we are spending less and less and less on education, and we are paying our teachers relatively less and less and less. We now rank 50th in per capita spending in this country. What I pay in taxes in this state is less than any other taxpayer in this country as a Floridian taxpayer. Dead last. We want a world-class school system. I'm not saying we have to spend a fortune, but we better step up. When we can afford it, Florida needs to reinvest. With that, I'm done with my diatribe.
Thank you.
I did want to bring good news. Our achievement is up, and I'm worried. I really am worried because teachers keep putting out and putting out and putting out, and they're not getting the recognition they need to. We keep doing more with less, and there will come a time, and I'm not saying it's this year. I'm hoping they keep going. There will come a time when that will end. If we do not support them, first emotionally and recognize them, but second, as we can, financially. I close on, I'm sorry, another somber note. But we lost a valued employee just a few weeks ago, Carol Midget. Mm-hmm. She passed away suddenly on Saturday, July 16th, surrounded by family and friends. She was a longtime member of the Church of God of Prophecy in Punta Gorda. Carol began her career here in 1981 as an employee of Charlotte High School in the food service area and progressed over time to the purchasing department. Her colleagues in that department will miss her smile and her spunk. Family was always Carol's life. She cherished her grandchildren, Adam and Julia. She was planning her retirement in October of 2011 when she passed away. She will be greatly missed by her son Kenny, grandchildren, brothers and sisters, and many nieces and nephews. But we thank Carol for her contribution to the education of our kids. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. If there's no further business to come before the board, meeting adjourned. I like your impassioned, please.
Well, thank you.